My grandfather worked here in town at the Leonard and Stewart mine. His job, he was a blaster. One of his favorite things to do, sneak home a stick of dynamite so that my dad and uncles could play with it. But he assures me he was a responsible father.
Welcome back, folks. This week we took a trip to the World Museum of Mining over in Butte, Montana. So let's have a look. Now, when you first get here, the first stop's going to be inside the gift shop. However, there's a bit of museumness right inside the gift shop as well. So a few things to check out's on the wall and a few things you can purchase here at the gift shop. But I recommend doing that at the end, as there's a fair bit of walking to do here at the museum. Now, we are doing the tour today, but we arrived a little bit early so we could check things out ahead of time. And there in the back area, there's a little rock and gem type setup. So you can go through and look at some various rocks and gems that may be either in the area or just, as this is the World Museum of Mining, they also have plenty of unique rocks from all around the world. So lots of cool things on display, lots of things to check out even before you go on the tour. I'm certainly no geologist, but there's still plenty of pretty to look at in here. I couldn't tell you the name of even a quarter of these things, but plenty of nice rocks, plenty of good pictures on the wall, lots of history in this area. Now, as we step outside to go gather for the tour to start itself, they actually have set up this as kind of a little mini mining town. So you could see what a mining town back in the day would look like. A few replica items. It sounds like some of these were actually brought in from original mining, and then some of them were just hand-built while they were on site. They also have a memorial wall for miners who have lost their lives in the local mines. Now, this big guy here is either called a gallows frame or a head frame. Both are accurate, and we'll check that out a little later in the video. Also, being a volunteer firefighter, we had to check out this little engine. Alright, and here in the center of town is kind of where we're meeting for the begin of the tour, so I will turn the audio over to the tour guide and let you listen to someone a lot more knowledgeable than me.
Harder question. Anybody know what a stamp mill does? It's a big old rock crusher. So you go down into these copper mines, you don't come back out with copper wire, right? You come out with these chunks of rock or ore that need to be refined or smelted to get what you want out of them. Be able to smelt them? Well, you got to crush them up first. Now, if you don't know what smelting is, basically a process in which you're utilizing the different melting points and densities of precious minerals and waste material at a very high temperature. For copper, just a little bit below 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Basically, you turn it into like a molten lava. Introduce what's called a flux, and you're able to separate out the more dense precious minerals from the less dense waste material, which is called slag. You want to kind of check that out. That's slag. That's leftovers. What you're trying to get rid of. After those acetylene lamps, they moved on to the battery-powered or electrical lamps like you see here. Think of these as like the first stage in their evolution. Eventually moving on to the type you see here. If you want to pass this battery pack around, kind of cool. You're going to put your belt through those loops right there. It kind of hangs off your side, cord comes up the back. You're going to see these latches on your guys' hard hats today. That's what they're for. And then the lantern fixes on the front end just like that. Right there's the motor. That's a General Electric 450 horsepower motor running on 2200 volts of AC. So anytime I'm talking about the hoist, I'm talking about the cages or mine elevators or anything coming in and out of the mine. I just want you to remember, here in our yard, ran by electricity. Double drum hoist. Way that it operated was 2 sets of cables, so there would have been an additional cable over here. It actually came from below this drum and ran out this flat, but both of these cables would have went outside to the top of the head frame out there. They went around those shiv wheels. Because this was a double drum hoist, it did have a nice feature. It could utilize the opposing force of lowering a cage to help bring the other one up. The counterbalance would offset some of that load from the electric motor. Now the guy that ran the hoist, he stood right up there. His title, hoist engineer or hoist tender. We'll talk more about him when we wrap around. One of the things I like to tell my tour groups, my grandfather worked here in town at the Leonard and Stewart mine. His job, he was a blaster. One of his favorite things to do, sneak home a stick of dynamite so that my dad and uncles could play with it. He assures me he was a responsible father. So to make it safe for the boys, before he'd give them the dynamite, he'd cut that stick up into quarter pieces.
Oh, just a little.
I guess that's the appropriate amount of dynamite. Yeah. Today, though, using what's called ANFO, that's ammonium nitrate fuel oil. If you don't know what that is, think like fertilizer bomb meets diesel fuel. Okay, mine elevators, bringing anything in and out of the mine. So I want to like make sure this is understood. Today we're going to go through what's called a portal. It's a big old tunnel with a path in it called a decline. That's an add-on. 2005 they put that in. During the operational days of the Girl, everything coming in and out of the mine, coming in and out through this head frame. Now a cage in this day is prepared to bring in and out whatever fits in it, but you got 2 rails inlaid at the base. But ore's coming out of the mine. It actually goes up above our heads to this garage-looking structure up here, what's called an ore house. Up there's a man waiting. He's going to grab this ore cart. He rolls it off of the cage, brings it over, dumps it into a set of ore chutes. All that rock falls down into a rail car, so it can be sent off to the smelters. Oh yeah, this is super roomy. All right. I'll show you a couple maps here. First map is a map of our shaft. It's a little terminology I'll give you in case you don't already know it. Vertical working shaft, horizontal working drift. You go one dimension off of a drift, it's called a crosscut. From there you do what's called stoping. Stoping can be thought of as like capillaries, that you go out in any which direction. And for the most part, stoping is where you're doing your actual mining. Now this right here is a map of our shaft. Our shaft goes down 2,731 feet. And if you look at this map, you can see it's represented almost entirely in blue. That's because it's almost filled completely with water. Back when they were mining, they had large pumps turned on. They pump all that water out so they could get back in there and do their mining. But when mining ceased, they turned the pumps off. The water then resumed back to its natural levels. Here in the area, about 115, 120 feet below the surface, represented by that kind of yellowish color there. That's the part of the shaft that's not underwater. Almost at the bottom of it right there is the 100-foot level where we're going to today, and that's why we only go to the 100-foot level. That's why anyone only goes to the 100-foot level, all that water. And this is the case with all of the underground mines here in Butte. Remember what that very wise and handsome tour guide told you above ground? Ridiculous, right? So here's a candle, and here is a bit. Now, a man with a very large hammer is expected to hit the end of this bit while I'm holding on to it. And it gets even worse. The end of the bit, hard to see, right? So they came up with a system. These men, they're actually holding their bare thumbs over the edge of the bit because they claimed that your thumbnail provided a little reflection, a little added gleam coming off of this candle. It gave that man with a very large hammer something to aim for. The idea being, hopefully, you move that thumb out of the way before the hammer hit. All right, you guys want to see how dark it gets in here real quick? Mm-hmm. You ready?
Of course.
All right, put your hand in front of your face. Can't even see your own hand. Nothing. This is what's called absolute or total darkness. And they train you. You get caught in this situation. Probably best just to get down to your butt and wait for the next group of guys. But if you have to move, there's an emergency or something, they want you on your hands and knees crawling using that rail system as a guide. Then we talked about mules, but after mules, they utilize what are called electric trams. This is a battery-powered cart. So it's just basically a bank of batteries that move around the other carts. So this guy, he's operating one of these electric trams. He's accidentally running over a fellow miner's foot. Mm-hmm. Simply enough. At the bottom of the sign, it says, distracted driving causes accidents. No big deal, right? Okay. But the thought bubble above his head, what's distracting him? Well, it's a naked lady drinking beer. And this was an actual safety sign in the workplace.
That sounds reasonable, right?
For sure would not fly today. Yeah. Kind of cool thing I'll tell you about buzzers too. So my grandfather again taught me this. Code of mine signals, the official universal signals you're using to get work done, right? But the miners did develop their own backdoor set of signals that were full of profanities and insults. I guess 13 long holds at the steward was the equivalent of calling your hoist engineer an SOB. Now, I have no clue why you're insulting the man that takes you out of the mine at the end of your shift.
Yeah, it seems like there you want to keep happy.
Right? But I'm told it's just part of that camaraderie amongst miners. Not all that big of a deal. On the way on and off, though, a couple things you can do. You can look back here. We actually technically have a fourth compartment, what's called a manway. This is an emergency exit. Something went wrong with the chippy, the cage, the cable, the hoist, whatever it may be. You were taking that manway to get out of the mine.
After the tour was over, we took a little extra time to go check out some of the photographs that they have hanging around and just how the lay of the land was for the little town they created. One of the more fun things that we thought was they have these little posters hung up all around the area. And these were old reference posters from the employer. A bit comical on some of them, and some of them, well, some may not appreciate, but we had a good laugh on a good portion of these. They also had a lot cleaner display of some of the tools that were used, so got to see a bunch of those up close and personal and get a little better idea of how they worked. Here's a fan favorite, probably a miner's favorite too, the honey pots. Who gets to clean those out? So if for whatever reason you don't decide to take the tour, they actually have a smaller replica mine set up top where you can kind of walk in a little bit and just see a little bit of a layout of what the mine down below would look like. Well, and here we go. Time to make the climb to the top. It's a fair bit up here, but it's kind of cool to see where they would take the ore and how they would run it through the chutes. We're only 2 floors up here, but you can already tell it's starting to get a little high. It's also kind of interesting as the wind blows. You can kind of feel the whole structure blow as you move up. I'm sure it's sturdy enough, right? There's a rail system they would run. I would assume going out to a train station would be my assumption. All right, up at the top here, get a good view of the lay of the land and see a bit of what the mining area of Butte looks like. And at the top here, you can see where they bring all the ore to put into the ore bins and get it shipped on its way. Now these connect down to those chutes we saw on the lower level, and then they would run onto the rails with the cart. Well, big thank you to our tour guide and the World Museum of Mining for letting us film during this process. You guys give them a look if you're able. It's certainly a good experience. Catch you on the next one.